I'm fairly certain that I've told this story, these stories before, probably even on this channel. I don't think I've done it as an independent video. But when I was in London yesterday, with Satine and crew, touring around the different stores, meeting gamers, store owners, store clerks and things from gaming stores, it came up that there aren't that many stores, and it also came up that, as compared to Los Angeles, London really doesn't have that many shops. There's a reason for this. There's a story behind it, and it has a villain, so to speak. Now, there was a golden age for role-playing gaming in this country, and it was really the 1980s. I think I would say there was a time when pretty much every high street or back alley in every British city, any British market town, somewhere there would be a hobby shop. Maybe it would be a role-playing store, maybe it would be a role-playing and board gaming store, maybe it would be selling figures to war gamers, maybe it would be selling airfix models of planes and so on. And there was a lot of crossover between all these hobbies, so if you went into a model shop, you would very likely find copies of D&D and a few other games in there. This was the state of affairs. There was plenty of it around. You would stumble upon it if you were interested in something else. Like if you painted airfix models and you went in to get some Humbrol paint and some brushes to paint your Lancaster bomber, over on the next shelf there would be D&D, and there would be Ralpatha miniatures or Mithril miniatures. There would be a copy of the Lord of the Rings game by Iron Crown Enterprises. There would be stuff in there. There would be battle cars, which I think was the first thing I bought alongside Middle-earth that set me off on my gaming career, really. There was all this stuff, and it was around, and there would also be the Games Workshop stuff in all of these different stores, and that's where we introduce the villain of the piece, really, because everything changed in 1990 with White Dwarf 100 and a big change of tack for Games Workshop. There was a time when you went into a Games Workshop store and there was metal music playing, and the clientele looked a lot more like this, and a lot less like this. In 1990, it seems that the accountants took over running Games Workshop rather than the hobbyists, and there was a big shift. Prior to White Dwarf 100, it had been a generic gaming magazine. There had been wargaming stuff for Warhammer, for Warhammer 40,000, even for other games. There had been role-playing articles for Paranoia. All manner of different games were in there. And Games Workshop stores, which were the predominant store, the one that was present in every town if there were no others, used to sell all kinds of other things. I got my copy of Cyberpunk 2013 from a Games Workshop store. They used to have the license for 2000 AD tie-ins, so there was a Rogue Trooper board game and a Blockmania board game and all sorts of other things. And then it all changed. They decided that they weren't going to be generic hobby stores. They were going to sell the Games Workshop hobby, the Warhammer hobby. And so over the course of about a month, maybe two, they sold off all their old stock and used the space to stock more miniatures, more wargaming books and materials, and their own in-house paints and all of that stuff. So practically overnight, they almost wiped out the role-playing industry in the UK, because you now had really no sales points. There were a few holdout stores, a lot of which are the ones that are still running today. But suddenly, the great mass of high streets across the UK were bereft of hobby stores. And rather than supporting a wide variety of companies and games creators and so on, they ripped all that support out from under them. And their aggression, their marketing, and also for a time their refusal to allow other shops to sell their product, put a lot of shops under. So there was nowhere to learn about gaming other than Games Workshop gaming, and at that, really only the tabletop wargaming. And they were undermining and causing problems for other hobby shops by denying them the ability to sell their product. You know, that went on for a long time, and then they finally began licensing it to people, but they did it in such a way that it was generally more expensive to get it elsewhere than a Games Workshop store. So why would you go somewhere else and encounter other games and other ideas? It got to the point where if you were into other stuff and Games Workshop stuff, and you went into a Games Workshop store and you started talking about these other games and materials and whatever else, you would get kicked out. You would get banned even. That's how bad it got. So the reason that there are hardly any gaming stores, role-playing gaming stores in the UK now, goes back to that corporate decision making in Games Workshop in 1990. Now we're starting to see a bounce. There was a mild bounce when Magic was really big because a lot of people tried to cash in. There was a smaller bounce again with 3rd edition, but both of those collapsed and took a lot of startup stores with them. Now with crowdfunding, with the resurgent popularity of D&D, there seem to be more stores opening up again, and Magic seems to have settled at a sustainable level, and board games are doing really well and other card games are doing okay. So it's now somewhat viable for new stores to start up, and that's a good thing. But never forgive and never forget that Games Workshop nearly killed the hobby in this, our glorious Albion. Zang.
It's really important that you use a palette because it controls how much paint is on your brush. Make sure that you don't get too much on your brush or your model. I'm also going to add a touch of water as well, just to thin the paint down a little bit to make sure it goes on the model nice and smoothly.
It's evil!